welcome to the table tonight. We are exhausted from trying to get a lesson on, I don't know what we were thinking, that we were going to do every day of Holy Week. I don't know, we weren't thinking, because that's a lot of information to really try to get everybody to learn something new. And I think Holy Week is a week that we should internally reflect, evaluate, because we really need to understand the price that was, we were bought with a price. It was an expensive price. So we hope that you can take some notes, and this Holy Week you learn a little different, and you can kind of look at your life and see what needs to be worked on or whatever. So I'm actually going to start out with Passover, because that is a Jewish festival that a lot of people they know about, but they don't really know where it comes from. So I recommend watching the movie Exodus. I think Christian Bale plays Moses. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
It's really, really good. So basically God commands Moses to go into Egypt and rescue his Israelite people. And so Moses goes in there, and of course Pharaoh's not going to let his people go quietly. So he plagues them and plagues them and plagues them. And finally, at the very end, he plagues them he sends the angel of death. And so Moses tells the people, he was like, all the Jews, he tells them, he said, you kill a lamb and you put the lamb's blood over the door. And if that happens, then the angel of death will pass over your door and your firstborn will live. So he was coming after the firstborn son of the Israelites. Not the Israelites, of the Egyptians. So the next morning it came, and then he says, this is what's so funny, he says, after you do the lamb's blood, you have a feast.
Okay.
So that's the Last Supper. That's where we get the Last Supper from. It's that feast that those Jews are sitting in their house with that lamb's blood over their door, and God tells them to eat. Could you, I'd be like, it was quiet. You could hear the screams of the women as their sons die.
Yeah.
And so they're all sitting there, like, eating the bread, looking at each other like, oh, this is really
You want to be
scary.
obedient, but you're at...
Yeah, so finally, the next morning, Pharaoh gets up. His son is dead. He sends the Israelites out of Egypt, and that's how God rescues the Israelites from Egypt. Mm-hmm. So they're celebrating that what happened with their ancestors of being, put in the lamb's blood. So at Passover, they bring their own lambs in, and they sacrifice them there. It's done every year. Jesus participated in every Passover since he was born. Passover was the one where he went when he was 12, and he stayed and asked questions. His mom and dad were like, where are you at? And he's like, I'm about my Father's business. That was Passover. And so he would do this, and Passover.
Did the lamb was the lamb supposed to be like spotless?
Spotless.
Okay.
Spotless. And that's the thing about it is like in the very beginning they would bring their animals, but as we get closer to Jesus' ministry, they would just provide the animal when you got to Jerusalem. So that was part of why Jesus was so mad in the temple. Mm-hmm. So, but Passover, that's what they're celebrating. And so it's the Passover feast, and everybody, normally in Jerusalem, it's about 200 to 300,000 people. Passover, there's 1 million. They say from 1 million to 2.7 million. I can't imagine being in a place.
And Jerusalem, it's small, right?
Yes, and everyone is sacrificing. They're coming, that's what they have to do. So some bring it, and then some purchase their animal when they get there. So that's the significance of Passover. That's why. And so God used Passover to give the example of Jesus being that sacrificial lamb that we need
to go to heaven.
Yes.
Yep.
So, so good. I learned so much, but I feel like my brain's about to explode, and I'm hopefully the Holy Spirit gives power to our words, so I think we're good. I don't think we have to worry about ourselves. So we'll just teach, and it will be what it is. So we know what Passover is, and then so we're going to talk about real quick another thing. I want to talk about the Saturday prior to Palm Sunday, because that is when Lazarus was raised from the dead. I did not realize that.
Yeah, I watched your TikTok today, and
John MacArthur is actually who I learned it from. I did not realize that. So basically, he raised Lazarus from the dead to prove, for one, that he was, the Messiah, but also to kind of give them, He just raised Lazarus but they couldn't understand that he was going to die and be raised from the dead too.
And the significance of the 3 days. Yeah.
Yes. And the funniest thing on my TikTok I was sharing today that they had a belief that after someone passes away, your spirit kind of hangs out around the body for 3 days. And then after 3 days, your body starts stinking and your spirit leaves, okay? So like,
did you say stank?
I said stinking. I didn't know if I could do that on here, but your body starts stinking. And so like your spirit's like, you stank too much and I'm not going to hang around. So Jesus was gone for 4 days. Mm-hmm. So Mary and Martha, they were so distraught because they were like, Jesus, if you would have came earlier.
It's too late.
It's too late. Like, and Jesus and everything, he was sad, and it kind of like, dude, why did you cry if you knew you were going to raise him? But I think that was just the human part of him. His friend passed away. I don't know if in that moment, I know he knew because he stayed 4 days for that reason, so he could raise Lazarus from the dead. So, but anyway, he raises him from the dead. But the funniest thing is the fact that Mary was just worried about her brother stinking.
Yeah. She
was like, Lord, you're going to raise him, but he's going to stink. And it's so funny because I'm like, oh my goodness. But that's what we do. Our minds can't wrap around what's going on. So anyway, so that happened before Sunday. Mm-hmm. And then, and in Bethany was 2 miles from Jerusalem. And that's where Mary, Martha, and Lazarus all lived. And that's where Jesus stayed for the 7-day feast. So he would travel to Jerusalem and back to Bethany every day. So it was a 4-mile hike.
And I don't think I realized that they were siblings.
Yeah. All of them were siblings. So not Jesus, but Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They were all siblings, but they were friends of Jesus because they had him in their house. You wouldn't just let anybody. But and I think that they were known in their town to be great people, hospitable. They would work in Jerusalem all the time doing things like that. So that takes us to Palm Sunday. And the way that the Hebrew calendar works, it doesn't work like ours. We're on a Roman calendar, pagan calendar. But the Hebrew calendar, April is actually the first month of the year, which means Passover comes at the first of the year. So it kind of messes everything up for us trying to see where things are actually placed because we're on 2 different ones. But so this is the first of the year, and Jesus, he is coming into Jerusalem on a donkey.
On a donkey.
And I never understood that. Like, the donkey part is hilarious too, because 600 years prior, they had said, your Messiah will enter through Jerusalem on a colt, which means a donkey's son. And it had never been rode. But I think the funniest thing is like these people have been with Jesus for, this is the end of his ministry, for 3 years. And he tells them, go into this town, and there's going to be a colt that's tied up to a pole, and if somebody comes up to you and says, what are you doing with this colt, tell them that the Lord needs it. Mm-hmm. So I mean, that took bravery on the disciples too, to really step out in faith. Because
if you were actually stealing something back in those days, it was what, an eye for an eye.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So they go and they get this colt and they come into Jerusalem, just like what was prophesied 600 years before Jesus come in on a donkey. And the crazy thing is, if somebody would have made this up, Jesus wouldn't have came in on a donkey. He'd have came in on a white horse, because that's what kings come in on.
Right.
And so he wouldn't have came on a donkey. My pastor last Sunday said, do you know how ridiculous Jesus looked to the Roman soldiers, because they thought the Jews were crazy anyway. And so here is this, and he said he thought Jesus was probably about maybe 6 foot, kind of like what they think, 5, 9, something like that. And so like his feet were probably, because it was a rock, he's bouncing all over the place, and people are screaming Hosanna, and they probably think, what is going on? And so, do you have anything for, what days do you have over there?
Well, on Palm Sunday, when he's coming into town, the people used the palm branches, and it signified him coming in. But it also, what I read was, it signified royalty. Mm-hmm. And so these people were accepting him as royalty then. Yeah. And then they were placing their clothes on the ground.
That's what they would do for a king.
Yeah. But then, days later,
they're screaming,
yeah, it was,
crucify
yeah.
him. Yeah.
Let's see.
The Palm Sunday, the thing about it is like, that's kind of when he was coming in to announce. A lot of people don't realize that Jesus came to die. One thing is that I just learned to say to people is, don't think that the nails held him on the cross. It was you that held him on the cross. That's what kept him on the cross. No nails held him on the cross. He's the King of Kings.
Jesus came to earth to save humanity by dying on the cross on Good Friday and resurrecting on Sunday. And so by enduring and defeating death sacrificially for us, he swung open the gates of heaven.
That's right.
Allowing our sins to be forgiven and ushering in the presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so
there's many there's many things that I'll kind of get into in a little bit, like what people think, like when Jesus died, he died in the flesh. He literally died just like we die in our flesh, but his spirit didn't die. And so like I have even, some people think he went to hell. Like there are, there's things that I've seen pictures of where Jesus, after he went to hell to grab Adam and Eve. I'm not sure. Like I said, that's way past my even able to understand that stuff. But he's grabbing Adam and Eve by the wrist and leading them out of hell, showing that he's the only one that can take anyone out. So I don't really know where he went or all that stuff. But there's so many different things, and I love to like dig in and look at what different people believe. And of course, I'm always asking the Lord to show me, reveal the right way. And if you ask him to reveal his word to you, he will reveal his word to you. And you will find a lot of times the things that I've learned growing up are not correct. Like it's they're just human error or bad interpretation or whatever. So, but Palm Sunday is like the beginning of it. And, people are yelling Hosanna because they know that he's the coming Messiah. And they're laying down everything, and that turns south real quick. It, So next would be Monday, and that is so Jesus came in on Sunday, and he went into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and like after they yelled Hosanna or whatever, he went to the temple, and it was late, so everybody was already kind of leaving. So he was just checking things out. And so then he walked back. Then he walked to Bethany and stayed there for the night. Got up the next morning, and it was Monday. And on Monday, as they were getting up, and there was a crowd of people. It wasn't just Jesus and a couple disciples. I mean, on Monday, non-biblical texts, things I've read, claim that there had been like 310 people that traveled with him in like a little group. They just kind of went back and forth in a group. They all stayed, most people from Bethany. And he had a big, huge following in Bethany because everyone knew Lazarus had died. And that's where they lived. And so they knew Lazarus. They knew he was dead. He was dead 4 days. And then he wasn't dead no more. So even after Lazarus was dead, the high priest and the Pharisees plotted to kill Lazarus because everybody was talking about it, that Lazarus was dead. He was dead 4 days and was stinking, and Jesus rose him from the rose
from the dead.
Rose or raised him from the dead. That's what it is. Jesus
he
raised
arose.
him. Yeah, he arose. He rose from the dead. So so a lot of people are already talking about Jesus before he even came in on the donkey. So now we're on Monday, and he's headed to Jerusalem. Do you have anything on the fig tree?
No, but I did read a little bit about that,
Okay.
and how Jesus came up to the fig tree and saw that it was withered.
Yeah. So when he walks up to the fig tree, it doesn't have any fruit. Now, I don't know the significance of the fig tree, and I've researched a few little things.
And he actually cursed it.
He did. He cursed it, and that was on Monday morning as they're going to Jerusalem. So he curses the fig tree, and I read this. I don't really know if it's non-biblical, but anyway, we always think about the apple being the forbidden fruit. Well, this theory was that it was a fig, and that is why because we know that when Adam and Eve became naked, they covered themselves up with fig leaves. So we know there was fig trees around, but they think that is why Jesus cursed the fig tree, because the fig is the reason that sin entered into our flesh. Anyway, so I don't know if that's true or not, but like I said, some people say the fig represents Israel, and I've tried to look into that a little bit, but like it's too, I need a pastor to explain all that to me.
I just had that. He said, "Let no fruit grow on you ever again," and immediately the tree withered. I didn't have any notes of like the significance of that.
So he cursed the fig tree, and then they went on in, and so Jesus, I didn't know this either. The cleansing of the temple was done twice by Jesus. I did not know that. It was done at the first of his ministry, and that you can read about that one in John. That's the only one, because he goes from turning the water from wine in Canaan, and then he goes immediately with his unbelieving brothers and his mom and some disciples. He goes immediately to Jerusalem, and it's almost Passover 3 years prior to the Resurrection Sunday. Okay. And he goes in, and it's like we have it's called a Pioneer Festival, but like if you have a festival, like a fall type festival, you have a bunch of vendors. This is kind of like what the temple looked like. There was all kinds of tables set up, and there was merchants and money changers and stuff. And the very first time it happened, that's when he got the cord, and he was whipping the animals and everybody. I mean, and like I said, there's 200 to 300,000 people in this place, and they're coming there to sacrifice. And what made Jesus so mad was because there were three things going on. First of all, the money changers, when you came into Jerusalem, they had different currency, and so they would say, okay, we'll change your money, but they're going to put like a 10 or 12% tax on it, because they were going to get their money. They would also, if you were poor, they would ask you to bring in pigeons, and so they would take a pigeon from a person, a widow or a poor person, and they would say they were going to sacrifice it, and they wouldn't sacrifice it, and they would resell it to someone else who was traveling and was poor and needed. So it was a double sacrifice. So that really ticked Jesus off. They were making money, and they, off of poor people, and Jesus was mad, and he tore tables, and he flipped them over. He flipped over seats, money, oxen, sheep, everything was flying. I mean, crazy. If you think about how dramatic that was.
They probably thought he was mad.
Well, could you imagine his brothers? Yeah. His brothers were non-believing. They did not believe that he was the Messiah. They didn't believe till after he rose from the grave. So here all his brothers and sisters are, and they're probably like, Mom, we need to lock him up, because, I mean, look what he just did. But there is also, so they're thinking that, but his disciples are remembering Old Testament scripture in Psalms, where King David wrote that you would have zeal for your father's house, which means when somebody comes against the father, like it hurts you. Yeah. So you have a righteous anger. So that's what led Jesus from turning over tables. He had a righteous anger. It was dishonoring to his father. So that was the first time. Now we're back at
the temple,
and Jesus walks in. So he's already cleansed it once with the cords. So I'm sure some of these people remembered him. So when he goes in and immediately starts flipping over tables. Same thing. And I mean, there's Pharisee, everybody's around, and everyone obeys him. I mean, no one stays in the temple. They go. And so he begins to teach in there. And then he leaves and he goes back. And it's like, yeah, oh my goodness. Because it was nervous for his disciples. I mean, like your leader, your rabbi has just went ballistic twice on the temple, and he's gotten the attention of the leaders. So, do you have anything for the temple? Mm-mm. Listen, I always say when we talk about cleansing the temple, how do we relate that to ourselves? Well, we all need our temples cleaned. There's no building, but we're the temple of God, and so we need cleansing ourselves. And Jesus probably needs to flip over a few tables of our own.
Well, this was Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So I had written.
No, this is Monday.
Okay, I've got some stuff on Tuesday.
Okay, all right. And so that's what when you think about it, he's saying nothing that is dishonoring belongs in the temple.
Right.
And so now you're the temple, and he's saying, let me flip over some tables. And that's like when you take communion, when you go forward and you don't go forward, but when the communion is taken, you're self-evaluating yourself, and you're cleaning your temple and flipping over tables that don't glorify the Lord. So I thought that was really good, and I learned a lot from that day. So let me grab my phone real quick. I need to charge it. My phone's never charged, and my car never has gas. Drives my husband.
But you make it everywhere?
Yeah, I do. Well, there's been a couple times he's had to come to my rescue with a gas can, but yeah, I'm always coming in hot when I'm going to get gas. Okay. Now, the next day is the fig tree in Judas. It's on Tuesday. So you said you had a few things on that.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start with it.
Okay. All right. So on Tuesday, remember Jesus cursed the fig tree on their way to cleanse the temple. So on Tuesday, they're coming back past that same fig tree, and it is completely rot. It is rotted from the ground up, the roots, everything. And so, like I said, the significance of I didn't focus so much on the fig tree, other than him cursing it because it didn't bear fruit. And so for me, faith without works is dead. If you don't bear fruit, you're dead. And so, maybe that's what he meant by that. So anyway, but back at on the way there, they passed the fig tree, and the religious leaders are so mad at what happened the day before. Mm-hmm. And they're plotting, and they're trying to ambush Jesus, and they want to ask him a couple questions, and they want to know what spiritual authority he's there.
What gave him the right?
Yes, to just throw everybody out of the temple. And what part do you have on there? Go ahead.
I just had that when they questioned his authority, they were asking Jesus what right did he have, and so he asked them questions instead of answering theirs. And so he didn't tell them that he is the Son of God because they wouldn't listen anyway. And so that was something that
he asked them. They said, whose spiritual authority are you doing these things on? And he said, well, let me ask you a question. And if you answer my question, then I'll tell you whose spiritual authority it is. And so he said, tell me about John the Baptist. Do you believe that his baptism, do you believe he was baptizing people? Do you believe that's from heaven or from human?
God, yeah.
And they got together. And so they were intelligent. Mm-hmm. They really were. I mean, they knew the word
They
of
thought
God.
About their answer and how,
Yes, it was very calculated. And they got together and they were like, well, if we say that, it was from heaven, then that just proves that, we think they're from heaven. But if we say it's from man, then it would show that we're scared of man. So we'll just say we don't know. Mm-hmm. And so they said, we don't know. And Jesus was like, well, I don't know either. Yeah,
I'm not going to answer.
So, so they start
Jesus said, neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things. Yeah. And so one of the other things that I had written down is that the priests would inspect the lambs to make sure that they were spotless. And this is kind of them doing that to Jesus. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Another thing that they did when he cleansed the tinsel, it's been an ordeal today. I've not got Lazarus out
say
very
Lazarus
much.
And Nazareth.
Yeah, Lazarus and Nazareth. That's what I've been all day. I've been very tonguey. But anyway, they would reject, when people would travel, they would travel miles and miles and miles to come to Passover. And they were so shady that they would reject, because you had to have a spotted lamb and it had to be perfect and all that stuff, and they would reject it just so they would have to purchase a new one from them. And then they would resell the rejected. It was just shady. And so you understand, I always just why did Jesus go in there and act like that? I thought he was loving, but when you see his motive behind cleansing the temple and everything, then you kind of understand it a little bit better and see his side of it. So the fig tree was rotted, and they were questioning him at the temple about who gave him authority, and Jesus even kind of rebuked them. I think there was 7 times he said something to them, and I wanted to read this one out of Matthew 23. He calls them. Actually, I've got it right here. This says, blind guides. For you are like whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, but filled on the inside with dead people's bones and all sorts of impurities outwardly. You look like righteous people, but inwardly your hearts are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness, snakes, sons of vipers. How will you escape the judgment of hell? That's Matthew 23, 24 through 33, if you want to read that. So those are some pretty harsh words to say to high priest and, and the religious leaders. So they hated him and they plotted to arrest him. They had already plotted. So, we're talking a couple days.
Right.
They are wanting to take this person out. So he causing some ruckus. So, and then on Tuesday is thought to have been when Judas made the deal with the Sanhedrin for his 30 pieces of silver that he sold.
Was that a lot back in that day, or
It really wasn't.
Okay.
And I think people sell them nowadays. They sell Jesus for a lot less than 30 pieces of silver. They sell him so short because they think that they can accept him and live however they choose, however they want. And that's not the truth. He paid a price for you to go to heaven. And so, in turn, your life should look like his teachings, or as much as they can look like his teachings. We talk about him washing the feet in just a little bit, but that was the perfect example to show how we're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to wash each other's feet, and we don't wash each other's feet. We don't do that.
I'd rather not.
No, yeah. Seriously. Back in that day, there were sandals and stuff, and so your feet was stinking. Everything was stinking back then, So I don't think they had soap either back then. I don't even think about it. All right. So Wednesday was quiet. So I would think Jesus caused a lot of stuff, and I think he rested in Bethany. I think he probably just hung out in Bethany and rested and ate. He knew he was preparing to go to the cross, and so I'm sure he was human. And
how did the Father tell him? I wonder how that even
wondered in the wilderness. So, when Jesus was baptized and when his ministry started, he went to John the Baptist and was baptized, and then he was led immediately to the wilderness for 40 days, and he had no bread, he had no water, he had nothing for 40 days and 40 nights. So I think that's when that's when God revealed to him through visions, through prayer, through
more than what we were told.
Oh yeah. You don't know. For 40 days he was out there with wild beasts and everything. And so one thing that I love is that on the end of his fasting, when he's worn down and weary, and that's when Satan comes and tells him to make bread, and Jesus he has to recognize it because he's not thinking correct. He's not in his right mind because he's hungry and he's tired and he's thirsty. So that's what Satan does to us. He comes when we're tired and we're worn and we're not thinking correctly, and he comes at us, and that's what he tries to do. He tempts us, but he tempts Jesus, and then Jesus immediately after Satan leaves and flees from him after he's turned it down, the angels come and minister to Jesus, and I think they probably brought bread.
Yeah,
I think so. Bread and water, because here's this lifeless body. He's human.
Yeah.
We forget he's human. He's like me and you. I was telling Lisa before we got on here, I was thinking about Jesus as he's going through this. So let's say he's at Bethany and he's just hanging out and everybody's laughing and they're at a festival. They're celebrating. And Jesus, in his human mind, has to be sad and lonely and felt rejected and,
he sees all this going on, and he's probably mentally
exhausted,
going through what's to come.
Because he knows that on Thursday, the next day, the day of Passover feast, the day of the Lord's Supper, the next day that changes everything. He's arrested. I'm telling you, you have to humanize Holy Week. You have to see Jesus as a human. He was God, but he suffered.
I've watched it once. The Passion of the Christ. That humanizes it. Big time.
I get so mad.
I cried.
I haven't watched it since I've been. It's been a couple of years actually. Of course, they don't play that a whole lot.
It felt like a family member was. I was watching a family member
It's amazing what makes you mad now. But righteous anger, that's one thing about it. Righteous anger is okay. But the bitterness and of our own stuff, but when you're angry about what somebody does to your father, like abortion, homosexuality, all of that stuff that is dishonoring to your father, you are okay with righteous anger. You don't hate the person.
Right.
You hate the sin. You hate Satan. You hate everything about it. And so, anyway. Okay, so I think Wednesday was quiet, and I just think it was reflection, and it just really made me think what was going through Jesus' mind when he was about to be beat to death. I think it was a whole lot worse than probably he even in his mind could understand. And you have to understand, Jesus was not this all-knowing man. He wasn't, like, nobody even thought he was the Messiah because there was nothing special about him. So when he went and read scripture in the synagogues the first time, they were like, isn't that Joseph's, the carpenter's son? Like, he's saying he's God, but he looks like Joseph's son. That ain't, so like there was nothing special about him. He wasn't like very attractive. I mean, I know one thing. I look at all the different Jesuses. So funny. The black Jesus, he has it going on. I'm just saying, he's got the abs, and but that's not Jesus. That's not how Jesus looks. He was not a man that was attractive. The white Jesus, he's got the blue eyes, and you know what I'm saying? And I like the chosen Jesus, the one that they've got in the chosen.
More realistic.
That's what Jesus looks like. But it's funny that we all have a picture of what we think Jesus looks like in our own mind to satisfy our own divided evil mind.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a white Jesus. Oh, he's a black Jesus. What? We're so freaking arrogant. It drives me crazy. I can't get on that or it makes me mad.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay.
Moving on.
We are moving on from that. All right.
So Wednesday was when Judas...
Tuesday was when he paid, and then everybody was kind of hanging out in Bethany, I think, on Wednesday. On Thursday morning, he sent John and Peter, I think. Yeah, Peter and John on to Jerusalem early to go prepare everything. So they must have been the organizers, the party planners.
He asked them to go find this man that had an upper room.
Upper room, go get the feast going, and things like that. So, like I said, the way that it works is that everything begins on the sunset before. Okay, so the Last Supper is remember when I talked about the feast where everybody's sitting there with their blood over the door. That's their feast. That's what Jesus and them were sitting down at. We call it the Last Supper because it was Jesus' Last Supper, but they were actually sitting down for the Passover feast to celebrate it together. And so as they were walking in, Jesus starts washing their feet, and that offends them. And Peter, he's like, "You're washing my feet."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, if I don't wash your feet, then you can't be a part of me." And I'd have been like, "Okay, wash my head, wash my feet, wash my arms, everything. I'm in. I'm all in." So he's washing everyone's feet as to say, They still don't understand.
And Jesus says, "You don't realize now what I'm doing, but later you'll understand."
Yeah. And he told them, but listen, these men, they didn't ask no questions. Like, if a woman was there, they'd have been like, "Okay, so explain.
Help me understand.
Yeah.
Help me understand the why."
Ask a question, like, well, no, tell me now. And that's probably why there was no women, present there. So, but anyway, so they're eating the meal, and Jesus is using this as an example of what he wants them to do. So we just had to look up this word. What was the word again? That
Eucharist?
Some kind of hard word. It's just meaning that the Last Supper, when he broke the bread, that means that his body was getting ready to get broken. And the wine that they were drinking was a symbol of his blood. You weren't really drinking Jesus' blood or in his body. It's just a symbolic sign, like Satan has all his symbolic signs that he does today.
Yeah, the definition of Eucharist, it's Eucharist. The Christian service, ceremony, or sacrament commemorating the Last Supper in which bread and wine are consecrated and consumed.
Yeah. So he was saying, I want you to keep doing this every year at Passover. I want you to break bread, and I want you to remember what I'm about to do. You don't know it now.
Right.
You can't understand it right now because I've not died. He didn't, but he was very vague too with how he said things like, I would have just been like, look, I don't know why they didn't talk about that.
Went over my head.
Yeah. So I don't know. But anyway, so he washes their feet. He tells them that he's going to die. He sets up this and he says, I won't participate in this again, in this feast, until it's in God's kingdom. So he says that he's coming back, so that's just part of it. So now, what do you have on? Do you have anything with Judas? Let's talk about some Judas.
I have that he knew, Jesus knew who would betray him, and that's why he said not everyone was clean.
So I struggled with Judas, and I still, my human part, because I can't understand that Judas came to betray Jesus. Like that was his whole purpose. But that's why we can't, our ways, so I don't understand that part. I know Satan entered Judas, I know that that's how Jesus was able to.
I think it maybe was in Sunday school that I heard that, and I had never realized. I knew Satan had a part in it, but I never thought about Satan entered him.
I don't believe that we humanly, which I know our flesh is evil, but to do heinous crimes that goes beyond anything that we could. I think it's always a demonic presence. I don't think we give demonic presence I don't want to say respect, but we don't blame demonic presence for anything anymore, when the majority is a demonic presence.
Right.
So, and I think that, how many times did Jesus cast out demons? I truly believe that their pronoun, if you use that, I believe you have legions of demons. That's just what I feel like. Why are you they there? When Jesus cast out demons, he said, "What is your name?" And he told him, "There's many of us." So why would you want to use a they their pronoun? So, I'm just saying, I think a lot of this stuff is demonic, and that's just my opinion. So anyway, so we've washed the feet, and Judas he betrays Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, and he leaves. If you've not watched The Passion, I recommend doing it. It is in Arabic, and Jim Caviezel does an amazing job.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so, another thing with Jim Caviezel is he's been canceled from Hollywood. I try not to get too real life on here, but he was canceled from Hollywood for doing that. Him and Mel Gibson both, they tried to make Mel Gibson out to be a drunk and all this stuff. You hear all this stuff. Not that he didn't get a DUI or anything like that, but that certainly doesn't define a person or anything. He's probably being harassed by so many people, not making excuses. But so Jim Caviezel, let me tell you, is coming out. There is a movie called Sound of Freedom, and this movie has been trying to come out for 3 years. And my husband and I went on a date the other night to watch his only son. It was wonderful. It's about Abraham and Isaac, and the very first trailer that was on was Sound of Freedom, and it's coming soon. And I immediately, before the movie even begins, I began to cry. And David's like, what is going on? But he knows that I have been talking about this because it is about human trafficking. It tells it all. And they've tried to keep it out of theaters. And they have fought it. And this is Mel Gibson and Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus, the Passion of the Christ. Jesus, the Passion of the Christ changed those men's lives.
Yeah.
And, Jim Caviezel was actually struck by lightning as he was hanging on a cross. So listen, Satan even tried to take him out while he was hanging on the cross, so this movie couldn't be done. You've got to understand, I have code chills, that Satan's present in everything. He's trying to destroy your life. He's trying to destroy movies. He doesn't want good songs. He doesn't want good movies. He doesn't want people to stand up and to become who God created them to be. He wants you
to live defeated.
Yes, he does. And so you got to understand that. All right. So Jesus, after the Last Supper, after the Passover feast, he goes to the garden and he begins to pray. And he was so, and I can't even understand. I try to think of the most scariest thing that has ever happened to me, that I would be so nervous that I would sweat blood. And that's medically proven that happened. But he was he knew what he was getting ready to go through, and he was scared to death. He had no one to comfort him. Because, God's in heaven, but he's still human on earth.
You think he was scared?
I think he was he was sweating blood. I think he was scared out of his mind. He asked his disciples to stay up and while he prayed, and they fell asleep twice, maybe 3 times. I can't remember. But this man, I just think about how lonely he feels. And so when I'm lonely, I think about that. When I'm rejected or I'm doing that, I think about Jesus, and I'm like, man, it's not even compared to whatever. So you have to keep reminding yourself that Jesus was human. He felt everything you feel. If you stub your toe, it hurts. If Jesus stubbed his toe, it hurts. He still was human. So every whip, everything, every hit, every punch, everything they did to him hurt him
It was torture.
It was torture, and it was made to humiliate him. So he goes to the garden and he asks his dad, "Is there any way? Is there any other way? Is there any other?" That's the human part of him.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other way? If there's not, I'll do this.
Mm-hmm.
And when he realized that there wasn't any other way, he stood up and he took it like a man. I mean, literally. He could have stopped at any moment. He could have quit. He could have came off the cross. He could have told them who he was. He could have called down angels. He could have zapped them right where they were standing. He could have done any of that. But if he would have done that, he would have went back to heaven without you. Because God is a just God, and that's what people need to understand. They need to quit thinking that God's this all-loving God who's going to accept anything. He murdered his son. He's not going to deal with your little petty sin that you're crying about that you want to continue to hold on to. He murdered his son for you. And so that comes with a price. And so
Luke 22:42 says, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done."
And he stood up and he found his disciples again asleep. And here he sees the lights coming, the torches.
Mm-hmm.
And, Peter's done, he's ready. He's done pulled his sleeves up. He's like, they are not taking you. They're under my dead body. They're not taking you.
Yeah.
And so that would be me. I mean, I'm a protector. So if someone's being bullied or someone's being, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take that from them. I'm going to try to be the new target because I just know what that feels like and I don't want anybody to feel that way. So here they come to arrest Jesus, and Peter starts to fight, cuts off somebody's ear. Yeah.
And Jesus gets on him.
He does. Tells him to put his sword up. Put his sword up. And he picks up that man's ear and puts it back on his head.
In front of everybody.
In front of everybody. A miracle.
Yeah.
A miracle. Still working miracles. When they're coming to take him away, he's still thinking about somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
We have to grasp the bigger picture.
And not just somebody else, somebody that opposed him.
Oh, absolutely. An enemy who came to do him wrong. So they arrest Jesus, and after that, court wasn't held at night. But everything happens in the dark. That's not good. And so they held court. And they went back and forth. We know the story of going back and forth between the leaders because no one wanted to take blame. Pilate didn't want to. He
gave them a choice.
Yeah.
Jesus or Barabbas, and they said to release
there wasn't enough
Barabbas.
To charge him. Barabbas, yeah. He knew there wasn't enough to charge him.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that. But he was also afraid of them getting Caesar and all, he just wanted to nip it. But he thought he could wash his hands of it and just be like, no. And he thought he was innocent from it. But his wife warned him because she had a dream, So all this stuff's going on. And they want Jesus dead. The same people who yelled, Hosanna, Hosanna, whatever, our Messiah's come. These are the same people that's standing in front of Pilate saying, crucify him, crucify him. Here is a man who has murdered. So you can either...
And he'd be a menace to society if you let him out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So here's this man, or we can let Jesus go. And they chose to murder Jesus. Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. So once again, I think about Jesus what was he thinking? I think the whole time he was thinking they have no clue. They don't know what they're doing. I think that he said that over and over in his head all the time.
And at one point when he's being crucified, he says, Father, forgive them, for they know
what they're doing.
Yeah.
They don't know. So, there was so much that went on. I'm just saying, that was the most epic Passover ever. Everybody's like, if you miss the 30, what was it, year 33 Passover, you missed it, because that's when everything went down. I mean, it's just crazy. But yeah, so they have taken Jesus to court. They are now saying he's going to be murdered. So why did they murder Jesus? They murdered Jesus because he offended the high priest.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't understand. They didn't know that he was the Messiah that was being sent. Even though he came in on a donkey and everything was fulfilled. All of the prophecies that were fulfilled in the Old Testament, Jesus fulfilled them by the time he died. There's still a few that haven't been fulfilled because they're, if he's going to fulfill all those, why would he not fulfill the ones that are to come? That gives me comfort as well. So they hung him on a cross, and the one thing about Passover is that, so this is actual Passover, where everybody's bringing their animals in. And so the horn, the trumpet blows. It's not really a trumpet, a gold trumpet that we have. It's a goat horn, isn't it? Is that what it is? So it's a big, huge goat horn, and you blow in it, and it's like lets everybody know that it's time for Passover. So they bring in their animals, and that's when they start slaughtering the animals. Jesus was hung on the cross at 9 a.m. when they started slaughtering the animals, and he hung there on the cross. One thing about Jesus, they didn't just crucify him. They beat him almost under, or you couldn't even recognize him. They were only supposed to give him 39 whips. Jewish law, you could not give 40 whips. Like Paul.
Well, they knew how far to push it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
without the person dying.
And so he was given more than 39 whips. Paul was given 39 lashes. You know, they just weren't allowed to give more. But then they would, like, switch something else.
And it wasn't even, like, just a whip or just lashes, because you think it's just, like, the leather strips or whatever. These had those little, like, metal, I don't even know what you call them.
Things. And, I mean,
it would latch into the skin, and when they pull it, it would pull the skin.
They were, that's what their job was. Mm-hmm. They were good at torturing people. And that was a very common, practice, crucifying for one, but they loved to fray people's skin. I mean, the woman at the well, I told her story a couple weeks ago, they frayed her. That means they peeled her skin back and threw her in a deep well for her to be a martyr she was murdered for Jesus. They loved to do that. They frayed her face. So they loved it. They loved it. And they just made a spectacle out of Jesus. And they not only did that, but they hit him, they punched him, they spit on him, they kicked him, they threw him down, they put a crown of thorns on him. I mean, they beat him with a rod. They
put a purple robe on him, and that robe, the purple, signified royalty.
So he was
and so it's just
to be king.
Yeah, they just did it to mock him.
Yeah. So here he came coming in on a donkey, as they were prophesied. That he would come in on a donkey, so he was claiming to be king. And so they're like, here, you want to be king? Let's put him in purple and give him a crown of thorns. I have that kind of tree on the back part of my property, and I went over and touched the tree that they made the thorn out of. It is the sharpest, if you ever see it, go over and touch the tip of it.
Well, and it wasn't even that they just sat it on his head, they pushed it into
pushed it
him.
down. Yeah. So, you just think, how can one human... I think we can take a whole lot more than what we think as a human, but Jesus was beat literally to death and then had to carry a 300-pound cross.
Yeah.
And they would push him and kick him. And I tell you, in the Passion of the Christ, there's that one time where they keep pushing him down. And I just wanted to scream out, stop! Like, stop it! Stop it! Like, how did those people watch that? It had to be fear of being crucified themselves, and then of course when Mary.
But that was something that was part of their culture back then, is crucifixion.
Yes.
So maybe they were desensitized to it.
They probably were. But I'm thinking these Jewish people who were crying, who had seen miracles. Mm-hmm. These people had seen miracles. They talk about Canaan, where Jesus turned water into wine. Jesus did more miracles there, and they still didn't believe. Like they say Sodom and Gomorrah, if Jesus would have done the miracles in Sodom and Gomorrah that he did in Canaan, Sodom and Gomorrah would have believed. Mm-hmm. And so now they just didn't believe. I don't know. But anyway, so they've crucified him, they've nailed him to the cross, and he's got two other people beside him. And you wanted to talk about Mary being at the crucifixion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me find that.
So it's a spectacle, and it's supposed to be funny. Like they're casting, like they're betting on stuff, and everything is funny. They're making fun of Jesus. They have made fun of him because he's saying he's king. Well, if you're king and you're God's man, why is God not coming down here and stopping all this? So they beat him to death because they said, you're a mockery. Mm-hmm. You're claiming to be something you're not.
Yeah.
And I just think now, everybody who participated in it, I'm thinking, I would love to know their thoughts now.
Yeah.
Like after you've hit him and you've beat him, and it's hard to believe.
So when I was studying, like one of the things that came to mind was like, Mary was there. She not only followed Jesus, but that was her baby boy, and so it makes me want to tear up. Yeah. But she saw her son was stripped naked. He was scourged until he could barely stand, beaten and sorry, I'm getting upset. Yeah. Beaten until he was unrecognizable. But the thing for me in studying this is, he brought Jesus into the world to glorify him. And so he didn't only have Mary there at the cross when he was being crucified, so she could experience the death and the pain that you would go through when your son's being crucified like that and tortured. He brought her there so she could see the beginning glorification and the ending glorification where he's resurrected.
Huge honor. She thought she was blessed, but she really was blessed. I mean, I think sometimes about her, I think, how in the world did you raise Jesus? That you was a virgin, so he's from God, and I guess that's why she was able to contain herself, because I think about what I would do if that were my son. But it would have to be, you would have to know that he was from God, and he would have to have conversations with Mom. My day's coming.
And then knowing that your son's the Messiah and that indescribable joy. I mean, there's just you can't even describe it. And so at the end when Jesus is crucified and he's resurrected, that's full circle.
For the joy.
Yes.
For the joy. That's what he came for the joy.
And one of the notes I have here is endure the cross because Sunday's coming.
Yeah. I think a lot of times, the things that happen to us break God's heart. Mm-hmm. He doesn't, when we are hurt, it hurts him. When you cry, he cries. He weeps. He is a God that loves you so much, and the things that hurt you hurt him, but he knows the end. And so that if for example one of you, your child has to go through a surgery and that's going to be painful, your child has to go through it because at the end of it they're going to be better. So I think that is how God thinks. He hates it when you're hurt. He hates it when you're rejected. He hates it. It hurts him. But he knows that what is coming, we can't even think to even compare it to something. There's nothing to compare it to. That's the joy. Mm-hmm. The joy of Mary being back with Jesus after he was resurrected.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's the joy we're going to have when your mama dies, or your mom dies, or your dad dies, or papa dies, or your child died, or your spouse dies. That's why Jesus came, for the joy of it. What a day of rejoicing that will be when we all get to heaven. I mean, that's a hymn. What a day of rejoicing that when we all see Jesus. We'll sing and shout in victory.
You're going to make me cry.
Crazy. It's crazy. This week, I don't know if I'm slap happy or what. I mean, I really feel like for the first time, it's really getting in, So anyway, because I want to see my dad again, So I'm ready. And Jesus did it for the joy. Okay, so we have buried Jesus. He has been taken off of the cross, and he has been put in a tomb, and not just any tomb. It was a rich man's tomb, and that was also prophesied. So, this man comes out of nowhere and says, hey, can I bury him in my tomb? And I guess they just didn't know that was prophesied, that he would be buried there. But the funny thing is that they say, you guard that tomb. Don't let anybody, because they thought, the disciples are going to steal the body. So they set up all kinds of guards.
And they bribed those guards. Yes. When when they found the tomb empty and the word had gotten back to them, they bribed those guards to lie because they didn't want people to know the truth.
Didn't want to know the truth. And so he puts a seal, and a seal is I don't know if it's wax. I know that on a seal, it's made out of wax and it's sealed. I don't know how they sealed that. I think it's the same thing, a Roman seal, then they tied it up or whatever. But that meant that if you opened it up, you were going to die because it had the king's seal on it. So he was signed, sealed.
And it was almost impossible. I think they had to have
it would have
20 strong, 20 or more strong men to be able to move that, roll that away.
So I still have a hard time thinking, like, after everything Jesus had told all of his disciples and his mother and all that stuff, of course his brothers still did not believe he was the Messiah. You have to understand that. His brothers did not believe he was the Messiah. That means James, his brother who wrote the book of James. A lot of people think that that's not his brother, but James and Jude that wrote the books in the New Testament are both Jesus' brother. So they didn't believe until after a risen Lord. So he's in the tomb and people are like, what just happened? Like, this is awful or whatever. And so Saturday is called Black Saturday. Not much, I'd say a lot of mourning and preparing because they were going to go prepare.
I had that written down too, but I had never heard of it called Black Saturday.
What's your notes say there?
Jesus' body rested in the tomb on Holy Saturday. It was a rich man's tomb, fulfilling the prophecy of Isaiah 53:9. Preparations were made for Jesus' body and placement in the tomb until 6 p.m. when preparations for the Sabbath began. And then I have the women who had come with Jesus from Galilee followed Joseph and saw the tomb and how his body was laid in it. And then they went home and prepared spices. Yeah. And so after that, that's when they come back with the spices to prepare the body that they found at the tombs.
So they had to wait. Yes. So they had to wait till 6. Like there was all kinds of law and all this stuff.
Yeah, they rested on the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm. It says on John 19:39, it says he brought about 75 pounds of perfumed ointment made from myrrh. Let's see who did this. I want to say Christ, but the ceremony treated for spices. Yeah, Nicodemus. So he brought about 75 pounds of perfumed ointment made from myrrh and aloes. Following Jewish burial customs, they wrapped Jesus' body with spices in long sheets and linen cloths. So they had already prepared it, but they were going back. So I think, I don't know how that works. They prepared his body. They put him in a tomb.
What was the spice that embalmed? Was it myrrh?
Well, I think so. Well,
and if you remember, that's something that was brought when Jesus was born. So that was already right.
Yeah. It all kind of goes back. There's always a thing that points to Jesus or whatever. So the women are going back on Resurrection Sunday, and they're going back to prepare everything. Why were they going back? That's the thing about it. The tomb was empty. On Resurrection.
Well, they had gone back to prepare the spices and perfumes, and so and then they had to rest on the Sabbath, and then they were going to take the spices and everything back. And that's when they found that the tomb was empty.
The tomb was empty.
Yeah.
So, for a lot of people believe that Jesus, because when he died, his spirit wasn't there. A lot of people think he went to hell. It says he just descended, so he went somewhere. A lot of people just think that Jesus didn't need and I don't think so either, needed the stone to be rolled away, because he wasn't there. It was just to let people in to find out that the tomb was empty, because he was already gone. Mm-hmm. I mean, his body may have still been there, but his spirit was already doing other stuff. And so when the stone was rolled away, that was very confusing to them when they walk up. They're like, did somebody steal his body? They were just trying to figure out what was going on.
Then there's significance of the linens that was left there.
Yes. He folded his facial towel, and that meant that he was coming back. So the significance of that, I don't know. Have you heard that? Have you heard that? So did you share that on last week's? Was that you that shared? I've heard so many things. I don't know who shared what. But if you fold up your napkin, if you're the master of the house and you fold up your napkin, that means you're coming back to the table. Mm-hmm. And that way the servants knew that not
if it was just wadded up,
they knew it was done. So his was folded up, which means he's coming back. I mean, it's just it's too much for me sometimes. But
I enjoy your excitement.
Not stand it. But I can't imagine. I get discouraged sometimes because being a woman. Mm-hmm. I feel like, gosh, but Lisa sent me this video that was talking about how significant women are in the Bible, and that when God needed help doing something, when the man needed help doing something, God would send the woman to help him. He was talking about sending Esther and sending Deborah and Rahab. I mean, he sent the woman to help. To rescue the man, because the man couldn't do it on his own. He had to have a woman as a helper.
He created Eve.
Yes.
To be a help.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when she goes to that and sees that empty tomb, they are told by Jesus, they don't even recognize him, and they're pleading and saying, if you've taken my master, give him back or whatever. And so they have the assignment of going back and telling the men. And one time there was an Easter, it's the same person who does the Not a Fan series. They do an Easter study, and we were watching this as a church, and the joy, and this is the most I've ever seen the joy on someone's face actually looks so real. The joy of realizing that he's risen.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I have a warrior spirit. And when Jesus comes back, I cannot wait. Like, I am, let's go.
Yeah.
And so, like, for her to realize, oh my gosh,
This
he's
has
alive.
really happened.
He is
Yeah.
alive. I think I would do flips and cry and laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you would just be so joyful because the Lord is risen,
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that his brothers didn't believe. And so for me, I look at all the things that the disciples, we've talked about the disciples, and everybody's heard so many things about the disciples. Peter denying Jesus that he knew him, and the rooster crowing 3
Right.
times or whatever, and how disappointed Peter must have been in himself. But I think that gives me hope because, I do things that I shouldn't do, and I'm so disappointed in myself. But it just, it gives us hope, that he's coming back and that death is defeated, and this was the sacrifice that we needed. God is a just God, and he requires a blood sacrifice. And so it would be like if me and you were God, or if I was God and you were sitting here and he's sitting beside you and you do something wrong. I can't let you get away with it because I'm a just God.
Right.
So it has to be dealt with, and so I don't really want to take it out on you. So he sent his son. But it had to be dealt with. So his son took care of it. God is completely satisfied with Jesus as a sacrifice, and so we live in that and know that because of Jesus' resurrection, we stand in freedom. And that's been a really, really hard thing for me to grasp. And it's because I don't want to disappoint the Lord. I don't want to sin. I don't want to, my heart hurts for what his heart hurts for. And so that shows maturity in your spiritual walk when the things that hurt the Lord or dishonor him hurt you. Your heart is aligned with the things that, your prayer is always like, break your heart for what breaks, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, when you're singing that, you're saying that to the Lord. And then we're like, Lord, why is this happening to me? We forget we pray for things.
Yeah.
Cleanse me. And then when he cleanses you, you're like, Lord, what are you doing? What have I done? And he's like, you told me to cleanse you. Becky had to remind us of that several times, So anything, you got anything else on the resurrection over there?
Jesus rose from the dead, fulfilling the prophecy. Early in the morning, the women who had prepared the spices before the Sabbath returned to Jesus' tomb to find it empty. Mary Magdalene arrived first. Now, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. That's John 21. And then 2 men, angels, appeared to the women to tell them Jesus has risen. The women, both afraid and joyful, remained first silent, and then quickly finding the 11 disciples, Mary ran ahead to tell Peter and John, and she said, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. John 20:2. Jesus met the other women on their way. And behold, Jesus met them and said greetings, and they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. And that's Matthew 28:9-10.
Yeah. So the next 40
Grabbed
days,
his feet.
Yes, I know. The next 40 days, Jesus eats with over 500 people. So, like, if you go into a court of law, you have to have one eyewitness. Well, there was over 500 eyewitnesses that ate and drank with Jesus. And, like, he wouldn't just go and open the door. He would just appear. Like, And Thomas, we always hear, like, doubting Thomas. Well, he doubted Jesus. Yeah. Jesus said, come put your fingers in the holes of my hands and in my side. So Thomas says, that's when he says, or maybe Jesus says, one of them says, blessed is somebody who doesn't see this and believes it. So that he's talking about us. Like, we're not seeing Jesus, but we believe that Jesus died. And from their testimony, if you read Peter.
Did he ask to put his finger,
Jesus told
in
him
his side?
to, yeah. because he wasn't there the very first time that Jesus appeared to the disciples. And so when they're like, Jesus is alive, Thomas is like, I'm watching with my own eyes.
Yeah.
And so they're like, okay. Like, seriously, nobody wanted to believe that, even after he raised Lazarus from the dead just a week ago. You know what I'm saying? These crazy people. So you would think that, I guess, that it would be easy, but like, we are a supernatural being. We live in a supernatural world, and we don't believe in the supernatural. So, because everything in this world doesn't want us to believe that supernatural, or that there's a spiritual realm, that there's fighting and stuff. So, and then he appeared to his brothers and his mom, and James believed. And I just want to end with this, because James, listen, when you have an encounter with Jesus, when you realize who Jesus is and the price that he paid for you, it changes your life forever. People think it's boring or not. You will never live more alive than you do when you live in the Spirit. And James went on to Jerusalem along with the rest of there's so much more that happens after. We can talk about Pentecost. We can talk about all that stuff later on. But, they ended up, after the Holy Spirit fell on them, they ended up going and teaching. Jerusalem was like the hub. And that's where James was the leader. Jesus' brother, who did not believe him, was the leader of the whole early church. And he would send them out, and they would come back and things like that. And so, it was just amazing. It was amazing. The Holy Spirit fell on all of them. So there's a lot of things that I didn't even want to touch about the resurrection, but here's just something for you to research for yourself. Do you know at the resurrection, when Jesus rose from the grave, there was other people that rose from the grave. Other dead people that rose from the grave that had been dead. Yes, ma'am.
What?
Nobody touches it. Nobody touches it. But that was how powerful the resurrection was. That the saints around him rose from the grave. Go look it up. So that'll be your homework for this week. I didn't even touch it, because I was like, how do you explain that? How do you explain, like, Uncle John been dead for 2 weeks, now we're by Jesus' grave, and Jesus comes alive, and Uncle John comes walking back naked in the town? I'm not kidding you. You need to go look it up.
I've never heard that. We're going to be looking that up.
Yeah, and if I'm wrong, then we'll come back next week and say I'm wrong, but it's not. It's crazy. I wasn't even going to touch it. So, I hope you all will be seeing this on Good Friday. I know this is a long video, but there was no way we were going to get all these days in just a 1938 or 38-minute video like everybody likes. But I hope this week you look at Holy Week different, because we live in a different world. We have to look at it differently, and you self-examine, and you look at your life, and you let Jesus flip over those tables, and you clean your temple up. That's the whole thing. Your temple is that's God's house. That's where the Holy Spirit lives. And so,
could you imagine, and not that we ever would, but like you going through that torture to save someone else's life?
We wouldn't do it.
And then those very people that you went through that torture for reject you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he knew. He even, I think the conversation in heaven was like, that if you go, there'll be some that will never choose you. And I think, yeah, I'll do it. Send me. And so therefore we need to go and there'll be people who will reject us, just like Jesus. Jesus couldn't be in his hometown. People rejected him. But you still get back up and you do what you got to do. So you'll be seeing this on Good Friday. And so I hope that you have a great Resurrection Sunday, and that the Holy Spirit does a whole work in not just your life, but your family, and that this Resurrection Sunday will be different. So we'll see you back at the table next week.
See you all.